The letter had been left behind by accident. I found it on a Tuesday afternoon in the records room at the edge of the compound, tucked between two old file folders my father had pulled out and then forgotten to take with him. The envelope was plain, the kind that had once been white but had yellowed from years in a drawer. My name was written across the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. It had never been opened. I stood there for a long moment with the folder in my hands, listening to the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the faint sound of wind moving across the desert outside the thick windows. The compound sat in the high foothills west of Reno, all clean lines and glass and stone, the kind of place built to look like it had always belonged to the landscape. From the records room I could see the long driveway curving down toward the gate, and beyond it the pale spread of the valley. It was beautiful in the way expensive things often are when you stop expecting them to feel like home. I opened the envelope. The letter inside was dated 8 years earlier. It was from a woman named Lydia Voss. I remembered the name vaguely from old company files, someone who had handled land acquisitions in the early years before everything became more complicated. The letter was only one page written in the same careful hand. It said that my father had moved the controlling shares of the development company into his own name, and my brother's name using documents that were backdated and routed through a shell company no one outside the family was supposed to know existed. The assets that should have been documented as part of any future division had been transferred quietly, piece by piece, until the portion that carried my name on paper no longer carried any real value. The letter ended with one line that read like it had been written in a hurry. If she ever asked the right questions, someone should tell her before the signatures make it permanent. I read it a second time, then folded it and placed it inside the inner pocket of my bag. My hands did not shake. I had spent years learning how to keep them still when my father was in the room. My name is Claire Donovan. I am 31 years old. For most of my adult life, I had lived within driving distance of this compound, working inside the family development company that owned large stretches of land in the high desert around Reno. The work had been steady and quiet permits, surveys, coordination with county offices. I had been good at it. My father had always said the details mattered, and I had believed him. My brother had been the one who sat in the meetings that decided direction. I had been the one who made sure the paper followed. If you have ever felt the ground move beneath a decision you thought was already settled, you understand why I did not call anyone that afternoon. I simply closed the folder, returned it to its place, and walked out of the records room as if I had found nothing at all. The call came 2 days later. My father's voice on the line was the same one he used for every conversation about the company, measured slightly impatient as though he were already thinking about the next item on his list. "We need you here tomorrow," he said. "There are papers for the new entity structure. Your brother has already signed. It will be simpler if you do the same." I told him I would be there. I did not ask what the new entity was or why my signature was required now when it had not been required for the last several transfers. I had learned that questions only gave him more information to work with. When I arrived the following morning, the main house of the compound was quiet. The housekeeper let me in and told me my father was in the west office. I walked the long hallway past the framed aerial photographs of the land the company had developed over the years. Most of the photographs were from before I was born. The newer ones showed the same ridges and valleys, only with roads and foundations where there had once been nothing but sage and rock. My father was sitting behind the large desk when I entered. He did not stand. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit," he said. "This will not take long." The papers were already laid out. I recognized the header of the family company and the name of a new limited liability company I had never seen before. My brother's signature was on the second page, bold and sure. There was a line at the bottom with my name typed beneath it. My father tapped the page with one finger. "This moves the remaining undeveloped parcels into the new structure," he said. "It keeps everything cleaner for taxes and for any future sale. Your brother agrees it is the right move." I looked at the line where I was supposed to sign. The percentage listed next to my name was smaller than the one that had appeared on the last set of documents I had seen 2 years earlier. Not by much, just enough to notice if you were paying attention. "I would like to have someone look at this first," I said. My father's expression did not change. "That is not necessary. Your brother has already reviewed everything. He understands the long-term picture." I kept my voice even. I would still like time to read it. He leaned back in the chair. The leather made a small sound. "You have always been careful with details, Claire. That is useful. But there are moments when being careful becomes an obstacle. This is one of those moments. Sign the papers. We can discuss any questions you have afterward." I did not reach for the pen. I looked at the documents again, then at the surface of the desk. There was a small stack of other folders to one side, the kind my father carried when he moved between the compound and the Reno office. One of them had slipped slightly, revealing the corner of another set of papers underneath. I could see part of a signature line and the date from several months earlier. My father followed my gaze. He reached over and straightened the stack without comment. "Sign," he said again. His tone had not risen. It never did when he wanted something. "Your brother is waiting for the final copy so we can move forward with the county filings." I picked up the pen. I signed my name on the line. The ink was dark against the white paper. When I set the pen down, my father nodded once, as if the matter had been settled in the way he had expected it to be settled. He gathered the documents and placed them in a leather portfolio. "We will have dinner here on Friday," he said. "Your brother will be here. There are a few other items we should align on before the next quarter." I stood. "I will be here." He did not thank me. He did not ask if I had questions. He simply watched me leave the room. I drove back down the long driveway and out through the gate. The desert stretched out on either side, the kind of open that makes everything feel smaller and more precise at the same time. I did not turn on the radio. I kept both hands on the wheel and drove until the compound was no longer visible in the rearview mirror. That night I sat at the small table in my own house with the letter from Lydia Voss in front of me. I read it again. Then I opened my laptop and began to make a list of every transferred document I could remember signing over the past 5 years. I cross-referenced dates. I noted the percentages. The pattern was small at first, then clearer the further back I went. Each time the number attached to my name had decreased by a fraction. Each time the explanation had been the same: restructuring for tax efficiency, for future sale, for the good of the company. My brother had signed every one of those documents alongside my father. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. The wind moved against the windows. Somewhere far below the foothills, the lights of Reno glowed against the valley floor. I did not feel angry. Anger would have required energy I preferred to keep for what came next. I picked up the phone and called Marcus Hale. He had handled some of the company's routine legal work for years, always at a careful distance from the family decisions. He answered on the second ring. "I need to meet," I said. "There are documents I would like you to review, privately." He was quiet for a moment. "When tomorrow? Early." "I can be at my office by 7, he said. I thanked him and ended the call. Before I went to sleep, I took the letter from Lydia Voss and placed it inside a book on the shelf in my living room, between 2 volumes on desert ecology that no one in my family had ever opened. It was not hidden. It was simply no longer where anyone would look for it by accident. The next morning I drove into Reno before the traffic built. Marcus Hale's office was in a low building near the river, the kind of place that did not advertise itself. He was already there when I arrived. I placed the folder on his desk without ceremony. He read the letter first. Then he opened the transfer documents I had brought and compared the percentages across the years. He did not speak for several minutes. When he finally looked up, his expression was the same one he used when he was about to tell a client something they would not want to hear. "This is not restructuring," he said. "This is a slow transfer of control, and the assets that should have remained visible on the books have been moved. I will need time to trace where they went." I nodded. "How much time? A week? Maybe 2? I will be discreet." I stood. "That is all I need for now." He walked me to the door. Before I left, he said, "Claire, whatever you decide to do with this information, be careful who you trust inside the company. Some people have already chosen sides without realizing there were sides to choose." I did not ask him who he meant. I already knew. On the drive back to the foothills, the desert looked the same as it always had: wide, quiet, indifferent. I kept my eyes on the road and my hands steady on the wheel. The letter was still safe in the book on my shelf. The documents Marcus Hale was now reviewing were no longer in my possession. My father believed I had signed the new papers without resistance. My brother believed the same. They were both correct about the signature. They were incorrect about everything else. The drive back to the foothills gave me time to consider Marcus Hale's warning. I did not call him again that day. I simply drove, watched the light change across the ridges, and kept the facts in order inside my head. My father believed the signature I had given him closed the matter. My brother had already aligned himself with whatever version of the story my father had chosen to tell. The letter from Lydia Voss remained where I had placed it, untouched and unseen by anyone else. 2 days later, my father called again. The conversation was short. He said there would be a dinner at the compound on Friday evening. He said my brother would be present, and that we needed to discuss the next steps for the new entity. He did not ask if the timing worked for me. He stated it as a fact that required my presence. I told him I would be there. On Friday, I arrived early enough to park where my car would not be immediately visible from the main windows. The compound was already lit against the early desert dark. Inside, the long table in the dining room had been set for 3. My father sat at the head. My brother sat to his right. Neither of them stood when I entered. My father gestured to the remaining chair. "You are on time," he said. "That is useful." I sat. The meal was brought in without ceremony. My brother did not look at me directly. He spoke to my father about county approvals and a potential buyer who had expressed interest in one of the northern parcels. When he mentioned the new entity structure, he used the word clean twice. He did not mention the percentage that now appeared next to my name on the documents. My father listened, then turned to me. "Your brother has been handling the buyer conversations," he said. "He understands what the market will bear. You have always preferred the paperwork. That division of labor has worked well." I cut a piece of the steak that had been placed in front of me. "The paperwork shows a change in the ownership percentages," I said. I noticed the difference from the prior set. My father set his fork down. "The change reflects the value each person brings to the ongoing work. Your brother has taken on more of the external relationships. That carries weight." My brother finally looked at me. His expression was the same one he had used since we were children, when he wanted me to understand that he already knew the answer, and I was only slowing things down. "It is not personal," he said. "It is business. You have always said you wanted clarity on the numbers. Now you have it." I did not argue. I finished the meal in silence while they discussed timelines. When the plates were cleared, my father opened a folder he had brought to the table. He slid a single page across to me. "This is the final signature page for the operating agreement of the new entity," he said. "Your brother has already signed. One more signature and the structure is complete." The page was dated that same day. The percentage next to my name was smaller still. I placed my hand on the paper but did not pick up the pen that lay beside it. "I would like Marcus Hale to review this as well," I said. My father's face did not move. "Marcus Hale is not necessary for this. He handles routine matters. This is not routine." My brother leaned back in his chair. "Claire, we have already discussed this. The decision has been made. Signing now simply makes it official." I looked at the page again. Then I looked at my father. "I will take it with me and return it signed by Monday." My father studied me for several seconds. "Monday is acceptable," he said at last. "Do not make it later." I folded the page once and placed it inside my bag. I thanked them for the meal, even though no one had thanked me for coming. I drove away from the compound with the new page in my possession, and the knowledge that both of them had expected me to sign without reading. The following morning, I returned to the compound under the pretext of retrieving a set of survey maps I had left in the records room, weeks earlier. The housekeeper let me in without question. The house was quiet. My father's car was gone from the garage. I walked the hallway to the records room and closed the door behind me. The folder my father had straightened on his desk during our last meeting was still there, slightly askew on the corner of the work table. I opened it. Inside were the documents I had signed 2 days earlier, and another set I had never seen. The second set was dated 4 months prior. It showed the transfer of a significant block of shares from the original company into the new entity my father had created. The signature lines carried my father's name and my brother's name. There was no line for mine. I photographed each page with my phone. I did not rush. When I finished, I returned the folder to its original position and left the room. The housekeeper was in the kitchen when I passed. She asked if I had found what I needed. I told her I had. That afternoon, Marcus Hale called me. His voice was the same careful tone he used in meetings. "I have traced some of the transfers," he said. "The assets that left the visible books did not disappear. They moved into accounts that are controlled by the new entity. The operating agreement you were asked to sign last week gives your father and your brother authority to direct those accounts without additional signatures from you." I thanked him and ended the call. 2 days later, I received a message from Patricia Lang, a woman who had known my family for 20 years, and whose husband had once done occasional consulting work for the company. The message was short. She wrote that she and her husband would be unable to attend the small dinner I had mentioned weeks earlier. She did not suggest another date. She simply said their schedule had become complicated. I did not reply. That evening, I sat at my table with the photographs of the documents on my phone and the letter from Lydia Voss on the table in front of me. The pattern was now complete on paper. The shares I had believed were protected had been moved in stages. The assets that should have remained visible had been placed where only my father and my brother could direct them. The letter had warned of exactly this outcome 8 years earlier. It had never been delivered to me because someone had decided I did not need to see it. I placed the letter back inside the book on the shelf. Then I opened my laptop and began a new document. I listed every date, every percentage, every signature that now existed in the photographs Marcus Hale and I both held. I did not add commentary. I simply recorded what the paper showed. My father called again the next morning. He asked whether I had signed the final page. I told him I had not yet returned it. He was silent for a moment. Delay does not change the outcome, he said. It only creates inconvenience for everyone involved. I told him I understood. I ended the call before he could say anything else. That night I drove back to the compound one more time. The gate code still worked. I parked where I had parked before and walked to the records room without turning on any lights I did not need. The folder was still on the work table. I opened it again. This time there was an additional page at the back, a single sheet that had not been there on my previous visit. It was a printout of an email exchange between my father and my brother from 3 weeks earlier. In it, my brother wrote that I had become difficult about the numbers, and that it would be simpler to finalize the structure before I asked too many questions. My father's reply was one line, "Handle it. She will sign when she understands there is no other option." I photographed that page as well. When I returned to my car, the desert was completely dark. The compound behind me remained lit, the windows glowing against the foothills. I drove away without looking back at it in the mirror. The photographs were now on my phone and backed up to a secure folder Marcus Hale could access if he needed them. The letter from Lydia Voss was still safe in the book on my shelf. My father and my brother believed the signatures and the meetings had settled the matter. They were correct that I had signed once. They were incorrect that I would continue to sign without understanding what the paper actually moved. The next step was no longer about asking questions. It was about deciding what to do with the answers I already had. The photographs on my phone and the letter from Lydia Voss were the only things I carried with me when I returned to the compound 3 days later. I had not told my father I was coming. I had not told my brother. Marcus Hale had reviewed everything and prepared a single-page summary that stated in plain language the sequence of transfers and the current control of the accounts. I placed that summary in the same folder as the photographs and the original letter. My father was in the West office when I arrived. My brother was with him. Neither of them looked surprised to see me. My father gestured to the chair across from the desk, as he had done every other time. "You have the signed page," he said. It was not a question. I sat down and set the folder on the desk between us. I did not open it yet. "I have something else," I said. "Several things, actually." My brother shifted in his chair, but did not speak. My father waited. I opened the folder and placed the photographs of the 4-month-old transfer documents on the desk first. Then I placed the email exchange my brother had written about making the structure final before I asked too many questions. Last, I placed the single-page summary Marcus Hale had prepared. My father looked at the papers without touching them. My brother leaned forward, read the email he had sent, and sat back again. My father's voice remained even. "Where did you get these?" "They were in the records room," I said. "The folder was left on the work table. The email was at the back of it." My brother spoke for the first time. "That folder was private. It was on the work table in a room I have used for years," I said. "I did not break anything to see it." My father picked up Marcus Hale's summary and read it once. He set it down. "This changes nothing about the operating agreement," he said. "The signatures are already in place for the new entity. The accounts are already directed through that structure." I placed the letter from Lydia Voss on top of the other papers. "This was written 8 years ago," I said. "It explains why the shares and the assets were moved the way they were. It was never delivered to me." My father did not look at the letter. My brother did. His face did not change, but he did not reach for it either. My father said Lydia Voss left the company a long time ago. Whatever she wrote then has no bearing on current decisions. I kept my voice the same temperature as his. It has bearing on whether I continue to sign anything else. My brother spoke again. "You already signed the last page. That is done." "I signed one page," I said. "I did not agree to everything that came before it or everything that will come after." My father stood. He walked to the window and looked out at the desert. When he turned back, his expression had not softened. "You are choosing to make this difficult," he said. "That choice will have consequences for how the company moves forward and for how we move forward as a family." I stood as well. "I am choosing not to sign anything else without understanding where the value goes. That is not difficult. That is basic." My brother remained seated. He looked at my father, then at me. "You have always been the one who handled the details," he said. "Now the details show that the structure has changed. You can accept that or you can fight it. Fighting it will not bring the old percentages back. I picked up the folder and closed it. I am not fighting the structure, I said. I am finished participating in it. I walked out of the office and out of the compound without another word. Neither of them followed me. That evening I sent copies of the photographs, the email, Marcus Hale's summary, and the letter from Lydia Voss to Patricia Lang, and to 2 other people who had done business with the company for years. I did not add commentary. I simply wrote that these documents existed and that I would no longer be signing any further papers related to the new entity. The responses came over the next 2 days. Patricia Lang wrote that she and her husband would be stepping back from any future involvement with the company. One of the other recipients called Marcus Hale directly and asked him to confirm the dates on the transfers. The third person did not reply at all. Within a week, 2 scheduled meetings that had included my father were canceled without new dates being offered. The social circle that had once moved easily between the compound and the Reno offices began to treat my father and my brother as people who required careful distance. Lydia Voss contacted me through Marcus Hale 5 days after I sent the documents. She did not come to Reno. She sent a short email that Marcus forwarded. In it, she wrote that she had tried to deliver the letter 8 years earlier and that it had been returned to her unopened. She had kept copies of her own records since then, not because she expected to use them, but because she had not wanted the facts to disappear completely. The papers I had found on the work table had not been left there by accident. She had placed them there during a visit 2 weeks earlier when she knew my father would be out, and the housekeeper would let her in to drop off an old file. She had done it because she had seen the new operating agreement and understood what it would do. That was the quiet role she had played. She had not confronted anyone. She had simply made sure the paper trail remained visible to the one person who had never been shown it. I replied, through Marcus Hale. I thanked her for the original letter and for the later documents. I told her I would not be asking her to do anything else. She did not write again. My father called me once more 10 days after our last meeting in the office. He did not mention the documents I had sent to other people. He asked whether I intended to return the signed page for the operating agreement. I told him I had destroyed it. He was silent for several seconds. Then there is nothing left to discuss. He said. No, I said. There is not. I ended the call. I blocked his number and my brother's number on my phone. I did not tell them I was doing it. I simply did it and then put the phone down. Marcus Hale helped me transfer the small remaining interest I still held on paper into a separate account that required only my signature. The amount was modest, compared with what had been moved over the years, but it was documented and protected. I signed nothing else. I attended no more meetings. I did not return to the compound. In the weeks that followed, the company continued its work under the new structure my father and my brother controlled. The social consequences were quiet but consistent. People who had once stopped by the compound for drinks or business conversations found reasons to be elsewhere. No one confronted my father or my brother directly. They simply stopped including them in the ordinary exchanges that had once connected the company to the rest of the community. I sold my house in the foothills and moved farther north, still within reach of Reno, but no longer within sight of the compound. The new place was smaller and faced a different set of ridges. I kept the letter from Lydia Voss in the same book on the shelf. I did not open it again. My father and my brother did not try to reach me through other people. They did not send messages through Marcus Hale. The silence that settled between us was complete. It was not the silence of temporary distance. It was the silence that follows when the last necessary conversation has already been had. I still worked with numbers and permits, but for other clients now. The work was steady and exact. I did not discuss my family with anyone. When people asked how I was, I answered that I was well. That answer was accurate. The choice to have no further contact was not dramatic. It was daily. Each morning I decided not to call, not to answer, not to explain. Each evening I confirmed the same decision. Over time, the decision became the ordinary shape of my life rather than an event inside it. Lydia Voss had tried to warn me years earlier and had been prevented from doing so. She had then done what she could with the tools she had: paper and patience. I had done what I could with the tools I had: attention and refusal. Between the two of us, the facts had eventually surfaced. The cost was the permanent loss of the relationships I had once assumed would always exist in some form. That cost was real. It was also final. I did not regret paying it. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever reached the point where continuing to explain yourself costs more than the explanation is worth, you already know the answer to the only question that matters now. Have you set boundaries that you are willing to keep even when the people on the other side of them have decided you will not?